Hi there, I'm Stuart. This is HiFi Pig Television and we're at Karnak. Where else? We're here to talk about the Technics 1200G turntable. So why come to Karnak? Well, it's a place of myth and legend, much the same as the Technics 1200 series of turntables is. So our producer thought it would be a good idea to come and make a short film here. So the 1200 series of turntables were launched in 1972, follow on in Japan from the 1100 series. They're a direct turntable, direct drive turntable, and the first myth is they're pretty much just a turntable for DJs. But that's not the truth. They were introduced originally as a turntable for home use, but they were adopted for DJs or by DJs because A, you can mess about with the pitch, the speed at which it rotates. The old turntables used to do plus and minus 8%, and that meant that you could beat match much better than you could on just a straightforward normal turntable. They're also absolutely bomb-proof, so DJs could throw them in a van, throw them in the boot of the car, turn up at a gig, play them, bash them about a bit, throw them back in the car, and away you go. But that's not to say that they're not a great home turntable. They are. They're absolutely fantastic. I've owned a dozen or so. I've added new arms to a couple. I've added new bearings. I've added new PSUs, all kinds of things. But it still remains the same, and it still remains the truth that the 1200 is a great turntable in its own rights. Some say blah blah blah, the tone arms are not good, Technics can't make a decent arm, but again, that's just not the truth. I've had some great cartridges in a standard 1200 and it's performed absolutely brilliantly. But let's get back to the to HiFi Pig Towers and we'll show you a little bit around the turntable itself, the new 1200G. So like I said, the layout is pretty much identical to all the other 1200 series turntables. You've got the on-off button here, which lights up blue. I think it was red on the old 1200s. You've got the strobe, so that you can see that it's spinning at the right speed. You've got the on-off there, and you can see how quickly it starts up and stops. You can select 33, 45, or interestingly, press both and you can have 78s, which sort of indicates to me that this is a machine perhaps in part aimed at archivists. This is the pop-up light, so you can see what you're doing when you're queuing up. You've got the pitch slider. Here you can go -8, +8, press this little button and that's -16. +16. For home use, that's pretty much irrelevant, I would have said. This will reset it to 0. The arm, I put a different head shell on. This is just our little Fwend tone arm lifter. There will be a separate review on that coming very soon, but it's a very useful bit of kit. This is the anti-skate. This is the tone arm lift, and this is where you adjust the VTA. So it's all pretty similar layout to what everybody will be used to with a 1210. So superficially, the new 1200G looks very, very similar to the old 1200s, 1210s. The 1210s were the black version, the 1200s are the silver version. But the first thing you notice when you try to lift up the new 1200G is that it's much heavier. Where the old turntables weighed 9.6 kilograms, the 1200G weighs a considerable 18 kilograms. I used to be able to pick up a couple of 1210s, cart them into parties and what have you. I would struggle big time with these. The second thing that you don't notice is actually on the inside of the 1200G. It's got a newly developed coreless motor which has no iron core and a twin rotor construction. The arm is a magnesium alloy rather than it being an aluminium arm, and I sort of think that the 1200G, it's the stepping stone between the 1200 and the SL1000R, which is Technics top of the range turntable, all singing, all dancing motors, etc., etc. The second thing that I noticed was the platter. This is a platter from the old 1210s, 1200s. It's pretty lightweight, whereas the new one, well, this is how it rings. Not so much rings as it rings a little bit, but this is the new 1200G's platter. As you can see, it's a very different construction. It's die-cast aluminium with a brass plate on top and rubber underneath, and if you tap it, you get nothing. It's absolutely dead, and it weighs 3.6 kilograms. Now, round the back of the 1200G, where the old 1200s had flying leads coming from the tone arm and a captive mains lead, with the new 1200G, you can use cables that you like, because it's got a set of RCAs like this round the back, and if you believe that cables do make a difference, which I do, you can play about with mains leads as well. So it's much more adaptable, it's much more audiophile in its makeup, and it's very, very different to the old turntables. Whereas you had, like I said, the old turntable was very lightweight. This is an aluminium top sheet, then you've got die-cast aluminium, and then you've got BMC and rubber under that makes up the base, and it all goes to add a lot of weight, and that weight helps stabilize the turntable, making it feel and perform in, well, I think anyway, a more robust kind of way. So I suppose the big question is, how does the 1200G from Technics sound? And well, it's definitely a step up from the old series 1200 turntables. The first thing is it's absolutely, or as far as I can ascertain, it's absolutely silent in its operation, which is a great thing. It's got a very, very low noise floor, and that pitch stability, it's absolute. It just doesn't deviate. And that forms sort of a rock bed, a foundation on which the music is, the rest of the music can come to the fore. It can just shine out from silence, and I think that's really important. Now, talking about the pitch stability thing, to me that's something that's really important in a turntable. If you've got something that isn't pitch stable, you hear it immediately. You play something like a piano on something that isn't pitch stable, and you'll hear it. It comes across as this horrible, wobbly mess, and it's awful. With the 1200G, you just don't get that, and everything else builds on that. If you've got something if you've got a hi-hat in the mix over there, or if you've got a bass kick over there, or strings up here, everything stays exactly where it's supposed to be in the mix. Now, it is £3,000, €3,500, and that puts it in proper audiophile territory, and it needs to perform well for that kind of money, and it really does. And for me, that is where the strength of this turntable lies. It is in that rock solid robustness of sound. It's a bit of a workhorse. It just gets on with it. It doesn't fanny about. It's got no histrionics about it. It just does its job. Now, one of the things that regular readers and viewers will be aware is that we play a lot of house, we play a lot of techno, and I think I was a bit guilty of playing the 1200 and playing absolutely masses of house, techno, quite a lot of dub reggae on there as well. And like I said, I fell into the trap of perhaps thinking it was a turntable that just played techno and house, and it does. It plays techno and house perfectly. If something's playing at 130 beats a minute, it plays at 130 beats a minute. If it's supposed to play at 120, 140, it stays there. It's rock solid, it's locked in, it's laser sharp, blah, 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 blah. However, I didn't just listen to house and I didn't just listen to techno while playing the 1200G. And one of the tracks that really stood out for me when I was actually in the process of reviewing the turntable was a song by Fleetwood Mac from the Rumours album. Everybody will know it. It's Songbird, where Christine McVie is sat playing a piano in an auditorium that's empty. And what I got coming from the absolute silence of the background was a real feeling for the recording space and the feeling of the auditorium. But as well as that, the vocal and the piano playing just came across as so pure and clean. But also what came across was the guitar. And you don't always get that when you play this record. On a lesser system, the guitar sort of fades into the background. It is in the background, but when you hear it, it comes to the fore a little bit more, and that's what the 1200G did. It brought that guitar out just a little bit more. It made it more. It was just more there. I don't know how to describe it. It just seemed to be more there in the mix. Now, to me, a record player has two jobs. It needs to spin at the right speed, and it needs to add as little of its own flavour to proceedings as possible. That's the job of the cartridge, the amps, etc., etc. The turntable's job is to get the information from the grooves and feed that to the rest of the system. And I think the 1200G does that brilliantly. Yes, it's fairly expensive, but it's a very, very, very good turntable. Now, is it the best turntable in the world? No, of course it's not. I don't think there is a best turntable in the world. It's very much down to personal preference, and I really enjoyed my time with the 1200G. But if you're in the market for a £300 turntable, what I suggest is you go out, you put this on your very short list, and you go and listen to some other turntables as well. Personally, I think it's a brilliant turntable, and I loved it, and that's why we gave it our Outstanding Product Award. So that's my thoughts on the 1200G turntable from Technics. If you've liked this video, then like the video and subscribe to the HiFi Pig Television channel. Thanks very much. Until next time. Bye.